Hello friends, it's Doc Maureen speaking. Welcome to another chapter of my study lab. Today, I'm going to introduce to you the periodontal ligament, the maxilla and the mandible, and the oral mucosa. So sit back, relax, and get ready to learn. Now, take a look at this. Do you see the purple stripes there? We call that the periodontal ligament. It occupies the periodontal space, which is located between the cementum and the periodontal space of the alveolar bone, and extends coronally to the most apical part of the lamina propria of the gingiva. As you can see, it looks like that because periodontal ligament is a fibrous connective tissue that is cellular and contains numerous blood vessels. Now let's discuss what periodontal ligament can do. First, when a tooth is moved in its socket as a result of forces acting on it during mastication or through the application of an orthodontic force, part of the periodontal space will be narrowed and the periodontal ligament in these areas will be compressed. Second, the PDL through its nerve supply provides a most efficient proprioceptive mechanism, allowing the organism to detect the application of the most delicate forces to the teeth and very slight displacement of the teeth. Third, the cells of the PDL have the capacity to resorb and synthesize the extracellular substance of the connective tissue of the ligament, alveolar bone, and cementum. Lastly, the PDL contains blood vessels that provide anabolites required by the cell of the ligament. Fun fact: periodontal fibers are like us people. They are categorized according to their orientation and location along the tooth. Like when you are from the Philippines, you are called a Filipino. Or when you are from Korea, you are called a Korean. Interesting, isn't it? PDL fibers are categorized as alveolar crest fibers, horizontal fibers, oblique fibers, apical fibers, and interradicular fibers. So, have you learned anything about the periodontal ligament? That's good. Now, let's go to the maxilla and the mandible. But first, I want you to use your fingers and feel the bone here at your upper lip. Can you feel it? That's your maxilla. Now, feel the bone here on your jaw. And that's your mandible. So what is maxilla? Maxilla is one of the facial bones homologous to two bones, which is the premaxilla that carries the incisors and form the anterior part of the hard palate and the rim of the piriform aperture, and the other one is the maxilla proper, which came from maxilla processes and its extensions known as the palatine processes, which develops into the hard and soft palates. Now, what is mandible? It is a thin plate of bone lateral to and at some distance from Meckel's cartilage. Right and left mandibles are joined in the middle by fibrocartilage in the mandibular symphysis. The cartilage at the symphysis is not derived from Meckel's cartilage but differentiates from the connective tissue in the middle. Ossicles develop and at the end of the first year fuse with the mandibular body. And at the same time, the two halves of the mandible unite by ossification of a symphysial fibrocartilage. When you were near the end of your second month, when you were still a fetus, the alveolar process started to develop. The maxilla, as well as the mandible, forms a groove that is open towards the surface of the oral cavity. Let's define the alveolar process more clearly. The alveolar process is the part of the maxilla and the mandible that forms and supports the sockets of the teeth. It forms with the development and the eruption of teeth, and conversely, it gradually diminishes in height after the loss of teeth. In the anterior part of the maxilla, the palatine processes fuses with the oral plate of the alveolar process, and in the posterior part of the mandible, the oblique line is superimposed laterally on the bone of the alveolar process. As a result of its adaptation to function, two parts of the alveolar process can be distinguished. Those two are the alveolar bone proper and the supporting alveolar bone. The internal structure of bone is adapted to mechanical stresses. It changes continuously during the growth and alteration of functional stresses. These changes are made possible by osteoclast and osteoblast. So here's the thing to easily differentiate the two. The osteoclasts are the eliminators. They eliminate over each bony tissue or bone that is no longer adapted to mechanical forces. And the osteoblasts are the producers. They produce new bone. And that's it for the maxilla and the mandible. Are you still awake? Okay, here's something to wake you up. Did you know that when you curl your tongue upwards, you cannot smile? Got you! Anyways, let's proceed to the last topic, the oral mucosa. There are three major types of oral mucosa. First is the masticatory mucosa that can be found in the gingiva and hard palate. Second, lining mucosa in the lip, cheek, vestibular fornix, alveolar mucosa, floor of the mouth, and soft palate. And thirdly, the specialized mucosa found in the dorsum of the tongue and taste buds. Gingiva and hard palate are keratinized, while the cheek, facial, and sublingual tissues are non-keratinized. There are 4 cell layers of keratinizing epithelium. The basal layer, also called as the stratum basale, that made up of cells that synthesize DNA and undergo mitosis. Spinous layer, or stratum spinosum, that has cells that are polyhedral and larger than the basal cells, and cells are joined by intercellular bridges. Granular layer, or the stratum granulosum, that has flatter and wider cells, and nuclei shows signs of degeneration and pycnosis. And the cornified layer, also called as stratum corneum, that has keratinized squamous cells with densely packed protein contained within a toughened cell membrane. The non-keratinized epithelium also has layers, and there are 3. Basal layer, also called as stratum basale, that is same for as keratinized epithelium. Intermediate layer, or stratum intermedium, and superficial layer, or stratum superficiale, where nucleated cells exist. Now, I'll show you a picture and tell me what it is. That is right. That's the gingiva, and it has 3 divisions. First, free gingiva. Second, attached gingiva. And third, interdental papilla. And has 4 major groups of gingival ligaments. The dentogingival group that extends from the cervical cementum into the lamina propria of the gingiva. The alveolo-gingival group, where the fibers arise from the alveolar crest and extend into the lamina propria. Circular group, or a small group of fibers that circle the tooth and interlace with the other fibers. And the dentoperiosteal fibers, that can be followed from the cementum into the periosteum of the alveolar crest and the vestibular and oral surfaces of the alveolar bone. Again, I want you to use your finger and feel this border in your lips. That is called the vermilion border of the lip. The transitional zone between the skin of the lip and the mucous membrane of the lip is the red zone. Now, tell me what this is. That is right, that's the tongue. The superior surface of the tongue is rough and irregular. A V-shaped line divides it into the anterior part or the body and the posterior part or the base. The anterior part or the 2/3 of the tongue is innervated by the trigeminal nerve. The posterior part or the 1/3 of the tongue is innervated by the glossopharyngeal nerve. In our tongue, there are small ovoid or barrel-shaped intraepithelial organs called taste buds. Outer surface is covered by a few flat epithelial cells which surround a small opening called the taste pore. So that is all for the periodontal ligament, maxilla and mandible, and oral mucosa. I hope you had fun learning today, and thank you so much, friends, for watching. Always remember to take care of your oral health and keep smiling. Peace!